Hello and welcome to Doing Business in the Middle East, an event brought to you by Business Live in partnership with the Department for International Trade. I'm Alistair Horton and I'm editor of Business Live, which is the business news site from Reach plc, the largest commercial and national and regional news publisher in the UK. At Business Live, we work with Reach's partner titles across the Northwest, including the Liverpool Echo, the Manchester Evening News and Lancs Live. We're here today to talk about doing business in the Middle East and how to help businesses do more business in that region. We'll talk about the markets that are available, particularly in the Gulf, and the opportunities there are in a variety of sectors, including oil and gas, healthcare, education, and food and drink. UK exports to the Gulf Cooperation Council countries stood at over £31 billion in 2019, so there's a lot of opportunity there. So we'll discuss different routes to market and some of the challenges that people might face, including differences in culture and business practices. And of course, we'll talk about the global pandemic and how that has affected business in and business to the Middle East. We've got a great panel to discuss all this and to answer any questions that you might have, and we're open to those questions. But first of all, I will hand over to Nick Cochrane-Dyett. He is chairman of the British Business Group in Abu Dhabi, and he's going to introduce that organisation and its work. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning, Alistair, and thank you so much for including me on your show today. A privilege to be with Imad as well, and Sandra, thank you all. I'm not going to give you a long spiel about the BBG in Abu Dhabi. I don't see this as a sales pitch opportunity. But of course, you know, we're always looking for new members, so that would be most welcome. Pieces that were sent out with the slides for us before. And so the first one, going straight in, you know, the different routes to market and how to get into the market. And I love this bit here, not fall at the first hurdle. And, you know, with no disrespect to the business people listening today, who I'm sure are all very savvy business people, we do see people falling at the first hurdle. And that first hurdle may not be in the first year, it may be in the 10th year of doing business here. But it does happen, and there are lots of good reasons for that. And of course, what we want to do today is to try and give you some clues as to how to stop that mitigation. Joining a BBG, a British Business Group, whether it's, you know, Imad's team in Doha or the team in Abu Dhabi, is of course something that we would all like to encourage. But there are a lot of other ways of mitigating falling at the first hurdle. And that is, for example, talking to DIT, and so it's great we've got DIT on the call today. Before you even leave home, talking to your British Chambers of Commerce who are scattered around the UK. And, you know, once you do look at joining something like a British Business Group, there are companies, for example, like Gateway in BBG Abu Dhabi, who've got a lot of first-hand experience about helping companies set up business in Abu Dhabi. And then we've got lawyers such as Clyde & Co members, who also give really good first-hand sort of knowledge on how to set up for the long term, because the rules and regulations here do change. COVID has been a great thing for actually getting rules and regulations across the line in the UAE. And so if you'd asked me 2 days ago, you know, what would you advise? I'd say, well, be wary about, you know, and be very selective about your choosing a local sponsor. Well, as of yesterday, some sectors don't need a local sponsor. And that's how things can change, and quite dramatically change. I mean, that's something they've been debating here for a long time, but fantastic. You know, they want to encourage FDI now. And so, as I say, some sectors, and so this is why you need the Clyde & Co's and the gateways and things, because they can tell you, okay, your sector does or doesn't need, your emirate does or doesn't need, because it varies from Dubai to Abu Dhabi to Sharjah, for example. So having that local knowledge on the ground is, I think, really important. And most of these entities are not expensive entities to get information from or to network with, because we understand, you know, SMEs and things cannot afford and should not be spending money on getting, you know, local information, as it were. The next thing we come on to is this cultural differences. Now, I don't actually see there being huge cultural differences. I think that the UAE and the UK, both pretty culturally aligned when it comes to tolerances and things. Human behaviors are, pretty similar. But of course, it is right and it is good spending some time to understand cultural differences. Small things like there's a great book called Don't They Know It's Friday? I mean, people still call me up and say, oh, let's have a chat on Friday, a Zoom meeting on a Friday. Let's have a Zoom meeting on the 2nd of December. Well, that's National Day. People in the UK wouldn't like it if I called them and said, oh, can I call you on a Sunday, Christmas Sunday? So, vice versa. We have to respect people here, respect people in the UK, and likewise. But when it comes to actually sort of, doing the business and building relationships and things, there are some P's that I would suggest. And the first one is patience. Things can take a while to get done here. And I'm sure my Emirati friends tell me it's exactly the same trying to get, checkbooks and things in the UK or bank accounts set up in the UK. So some of these bureaucratic things, they just take a time and you need patience to go about doing them. Second P I would suggest is persistence. There are actually very few Emiratis available to do business with. A lot of them are, majority of them, connected to the government, so they're careful and considerate about what they can and can't do being a member of the government or working in the government. So you may need to chase up a little bit. You may need to keep persistent, keep on going on. And again, I hear that they have the same things in the UK about, people are always busy in the UK. So persistence probably works both ways. And then the last P I would suggest is profitability. There is nothing like motivating an Emirati, and I'm sure it's the same in the UK, showing them the profitability of your business. And so if you focus on those P's, patience, persistence, profitability, I think that's going to help you, get into the business more successfully. What kind of opportunities for UK exporters into the Middle East at the moment? Oil and gas we know about. And oil and gas, hydrocarbons, a bit of a dirty word. Everybody's, turning to clean energy and all the rest of it. There's still an awful lot of hydrocarbons to be developed in this part of the world. And the world is not going to stop using oil and gas, for the few decades. So those sectors are and will be, they spend billions and billions just keeping up the amount of production, because obviously they're using some of what they produce. They need to find more to replace what they've sold. And so just keeping the oil and gas sector going is always opportunity for UK companies. In Abu Dhabi, 400, 500 billion dirhams worth of opportunities in the next 5 years. I mean, it's huge, huge numbers. And for the Emiratis, they're aware that there are opportunities in Aberdeen. So it is bilateral. We do want it going both ways. One-way traffic is not always very healthy for business. Life sciences right now, because of COVID, is obviously a huge area of interest. You've got healthcare down here. Yes, healthcare has been, always will be an area of interest to do business. Education, the Emiratis understand the importance of education. Interestingly enough, about 2/3 of Dubai's education sector, private education, is actually under the UK English curriculum. So we've got several 100,000 youngsters learning in Dubai using the British or UK's English, curriculum. So great, area of interest, and again, always been and always will be important. Food and drink, they've realized that some of the food and drink rules and regulations imposed in the country were quite onerous for UK producers, so they've relaxed some of those. the good thing around things like that is that, we mentioned the British Business Group. I didn't mention the UAE UK Business Council, which is a connection between government to government and business to business. It's the bridge, as it were. And obviously that's an important area when it comes to changing out rules and regulations. If things like stamping food is too onerous, British companies can go to UUBC, can go to UK government and say, hey, please help us. And again, this is where DIT come in and really help make life. So if you think that there are barriers and you want to come into the UAE, but you think that there are barriers, there are ways to mitigate and to remove those barriers. And the food and drink sector has been a great example of how that can be done. Other areas of interest at the moment, fintech is really top of the pops at the moment, as is agri-tech. If there are any fintech companies on the show at the moment, please make sure you join the ADGM, the Abu Dhabi Global Markets event that's going on tomorrow and the next day. They reckon there are going to be thousands of people joining from around the world. It's a virtual event, obviously, for this year. Last year's live event, there were 5,000 or 6,000 people. I mean, this is a big fintech event. And Abu Dhabi Global Markets, DIFC in Dubai, these are all singing, all dancing. They want to be, right at the lead, as it were, when it comes to doing, finance and doing business in the latest and greatest ways. I mentioned agri-tech just now. People are concerned, obviously, about supply of food, food security because of COVID and things. So some of these areas are relatively new and exciting. What I would say is that areas that interest the Emiratis, are innovation. It doesn't matter whether it's innovation in healthcare, innovation in whatever sector, oil and gas, renewables, anything that's got innovation, they're interested in it. And, in Abu Dhabi, for example, in this ADGM I mentioned just now, there's a thing called Hub 71. You might even find that you've got a product that they will help you set up and invest in Abu Dhabi. So, do have a look at this Hub 71. If you're into innovation, they're very much keen to have a look at new innovative ideas. AI, anything that's got AI in it, digitalization, all of the key buzzwords that you hear, the Emiratis are really up for looking at those things and seeing what they can do. Of course, I heard the word Manchester mentioned just now. You're going to get a warm, warm welcome. And I can say that from my own personal experience. I wrote a small book about early days in the Emirates. And the foreword is written by His Highness the Deputy Prime Minister. And His Highness is also the owner of Manchester City, note the blue tie. And so the Emiratis have been investing in the north of England because they believe it's a good place to invest in. So when you come here and you say that, you're from Manchester, you're a Liverpool supporter, ahlan wa sahlan, you will get a very warm welcome for sure, because you're from a part of the world that they think is good to invest in. And so, as I say, people always like to invest mutually, where it's win-win and it's a two-way street. The last topic I have here, I'm watching the time, the impact of the pandemic and how it's affected companies. Yes, of course, it's had an impact. But the impact, I think, has been positive. As I say, they've actually changed some of the rules and regulations to encourage more FDI, to encourage people to come and set up business here. They're relaxing the rules and regulations to encourage all of this investment. And so, yes, while it's sort of slowed physical, and I would always encourage physical visits once COVID restrictions allow. But currently, obviously, that is restrictive. But it doesn't stop people from, talking to BBGs, talking to UUBC, DIT, and all the rest of it, doing their homework, investigating ADGM, Hub 71, finding, companies like Gateway, finding Clyde & Co, lawyers and things, and starting the process. and seeing and keeping an eye on how these rules and regulations are changing, as I say, not on a daily basis, but fairly regularly. And these changes to the commercial companies law, that was 2015, now we're 2020. It's a big change and it's significant. And I don't understand all the impact of it yet, because as I say, it only happened yesterday, but it is definitely going to encourage FDI. Some of the social laws are also changing. Tolerance, as I say, is very much practiced here now. And so people, it's a very Anglified part of the world anyway, the UAE, but people will find it even more easier and more comfortable to start doing business here. I've come to the end of my time, I note, and I thank you for your attention. If you do have any questions, we're happy to take them. Also, I hope there's a slide somewhere. There we go. Thank you very much. Right on cue. Well done, David. There are some social media and email addresses there. If you've got any questions, you want to know anything about, setting up business here, those are Abu Dhabi BBGs. We can easily put you in touch with our colleagues in Dubai, BBG there as well. Equally, UUBC, DIT, we all work very closely together. And with that, I will say thank you very much for your attention. Back to you, Alistair.
Thank you very much indeed, Nick. Patience, persistence and profitability. I'm sure we'll be returning to some of those points later on. Nick will be joining our panel of experts later, so we will be able to take questions from you if you're listening in. You'll be able to share them via this platform you're watching on at the moment. But now I'd like to introduce our next speaker. He is Imad Turkman, MBE. He is chairman of the Qatar British Business Forum and Group CEO at Rumaila Group. And he is going to tell us about that Gulf state and the opportunities available there, and talk us through all that. Good morning, Imad, and welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon in my part of the world.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me with your panel. I'm afraid David just said whatever I wanted to say, really, so I don't really have much to say except talking about football, which obviously I won't be doing that. I'm delighted to be part of this group. I'm half Mancunian. I studied North Trafford College and went to Salford University, and Manchester is very close to my heart. I've been in Qatar for the last 25 years, and I've seen Qatar growing from a sleepy town by the seaside to a thriving city today. I think, like anything else, if we're going to do a business in a country, we'd like to know a little bit about the history of the country itself. As we know the history, it will guide us really to know what to do and what to avoid. Next slide, please. Qatar history basically is very, very recent one. It was a tiny, as he said, fishing village. But what's interesting is in 1916, Qatar signed a deal with Britain. We come under British protectorate. So the Britain's history with Qatar goes back to 1916. So therefore, we have a long history in the country. Next slide, please. Like anything else, rest of the Gulf, oil was struck in 1939, and through the Second World War, they couldn't export the first shipment with 1947. And in 1971, Qatar became independent. Next slide, please. Oil prices helped the economy, obviously, from sleeping tiny village or the town by the seaside, became a big country using all the resources, which was invested wisely. And lately, they've gone away from the oil into LNG, liquefied natural gas, which was discovered in Qatar a long time ago, but went into production in 2005. Next slide, please. One thing happened in Qatar, which is unlike any other countries. In 2008, a first Roman Catholic Church was established, which meant basically Qatar decided to open up to the rest of the world and become part of the civilized world, where everybody is free to worship and practice whatever they want. The major development, obviously, which put Qatar into the map of the world, is winning the World Cup in 2010. Next slide, please. I just want to show you basically a picture of Qatar 1940s. Look what it's like. And next slide, please, which will show you the glimpse of of Qatar today. Next, please. And next, please. And next one, please. Next one, opportunities. I would say, why Qatar? Why not rest of the world? And there are many reasons why I would say Qatar is good for business. Next slide, please. Small country, overall population 2.7 million. Only 300,000 of them are Qataris. The rest people like myself making a nice living in this part of the world. Highest GDP in the world, third largest gas reserves in the world. And 2023, and this is an important one, 2023, Qatar's LNG exports will be equivalent of 13 million barrels a day. If you can imagine, Saudi Arabia's production today is about 12 million barrels a day, and Qatar will have 13 million barrels a day with a population like 300,000 locals. You can imagine the enormous wealth this LNG export is going to bring into the country, and that itself will open amazing opportunities to everybody in the world and to come over and invest in this country. I'm just going to go through a few of the ongoing projects. Next slide, please. Ongoing projects in Qatar, which basically gives you a token of what's happened in the country. I can't really cover all of them because it will take me next couple of hours to talk about all the exciting projects. But one of the big things is establishing a free zone, almost like arriving Jabal Ali in Dubai, where people could come in and set up their own distribution center. Even they could set up their own factories. Will be tax concessions, will be utility concessions, and also the companies could set up 100% ownership of foreign ownership, or you could use Qatar as a hub. And this free zone is located next to the Doha Port, which is an amazingly big project we just finished a couple of years ago with enormous capacities, and also next to Doha International Airport. So from logistics point of view, is an ideal locations to have your businesses, whether it was in food industry, whether it was in manufacturing and other type of businesses, you will have easy access to the airport facilities and also to the port facilities for import and export. Oil and gas, we've mentioned, itself is a big industry. It attracts literally electromechanical companies and mainstream, downstream companies into the country. Qatar has got a major, amazingly big industrial area called Ras Laffan, where all big majors, oil majors from Shell to ExxonMobil and others, they all came and invested big structures there and projects. Any oil and gas company and project will open the door to subcontractors. Whether you are small or big, you will have an opportunity to contribute to those massive projects. Next, please. Qatar National Vision 2030. Qatar National Vision is basically, this is what the government of Qatar sat down and planned where they want to be in 2030. They're very wise in investing their money in major projects. Also, Qatar Industrial Development Bank and Qatar Investment Authority rather, investing big money abroad, buying projects and buying investment opportunities. This is basically a sovereign fund which will feed the next generations of Qataris should the oil and gas will come out and finish one day. The national vision includes economic development, social development, human development, environmental development. Each of the sectors will have enormous opportunities for UK opportunities and for UK companies rather to come to Qatar and set up their businesses. Once you arrive in Qatar, there are many ways of doing business in Qatar. Next slide, please. Setting up limited liability company, which basically could come in, and by then you will have to have a local partner. A local branch, if you have a company within the GCC, you can have a branch of the company, so you don't have to have a local partner. Project-based company, if you are an infrastructure or book project, you could come in and set up a company based on one project alone. You will stay in the country for the duration of that project. Qatar Financial Center, which basically looks after all the finances and financial sector, insurance sector, and all finance-related companies could come up and set up a company in Qatar using their facilities without having local sponsor. As I mentioned earlier on, the Free Zone, I'm quite excited about Free Zone. I've just had a guided tour of the place last week. It's an enormous place, and also there are 2 other locations going to come up. And Qataris are very, very excited about this. In a way, there is almost like a bus company, a bus producing company, a manufacturing coming to set up in the Free Zone. There are many high-tech companies that are coming in. The list is endless. Therefore, they decided to expand the location from 1 into 3 other locations in Qatar. That shows how successful and the ambitious plans they have for this place. As David mentioned earlier on, important advice to people coming into the country, really, choosing the correct partner. I always say that going into business with other people like a marriage, you have to choose your partner very well. This is coming from somebody who's been divorced twice, so I know what's like not choosing the wrong partner, really. So choosing the right partner is an amazing, it's the best thing to do. And how you do that? By talking to people like yourself, the business group, talking to the embassy, talking to old-timers who've been in the country, will give you advice who to talk to and who to avoid. There are many people who could pretend they are well connected and they could help you out and do this sort of things, but actually there's all the promises are shallow promises. So choosing the right person and the right partner, I always say that is from talking from experience now. Having local office, as I said, if you have a businesses in the rest of GCC, you could come and set up here. I always say people, one thing, Qataris, like all Gulf Arabs, they don't like what I call suitcase or briefcase salesman or diplomacy. They like to see you. They like to get to know you. They like to see you in the supermarkets. They like to see you in their majlises, in their houses, in their weddings, and so they got to know you. Once they get to know you, that's it. You are their friends. As long as you are honest and you don't do the dirty trick on them, they will be your friends forever. Taking advice, as I said, from British Embassy and from other familiar people. Being familiar with the rules and regulations, obviously, that's the only way of doing that, by being in the country, and that will help you to overcome problems. Next slide, please. Other reasons, very simple, actually. Next slide, please. Why Qatar? Safe country. I never lock my front door. I remember in Manchester, I used to lock it and put the cameras on and make sure it's double lock and not a single lock. Not Manchester's unsafe, but this is the way it happens in that part of the world. I drive a Range Rover. I leave the key inside. I don't lock the door. And I'm not exaggerating. I really do that. And where else in the world you could do that? I had 2 young kids. I never used to worry about them, and they were safe and out and about. Good education, again, my children went, as David mentioned earlier on, same in Qatar. There are many good UK-based fellow English curriculum schools in the country, which gives first-class education. So that is really an important if you have a family in the country. Friendly host nation. Qatar is a very nice people, like all the Gulf Arabs. They like people, and they like to know you, to get to know you. And once you are their friends, you stay their friends forever. Easy working environment. Yes, amazing infrastructure. We've got a metro in Qatar. The roads are amazing, and a beautiful place to live, really, with all sorts of mud cons and whatever you like. And if you are into sports, there are sports facilities available. If you're into the eating out, amazing international restaurants over here, into sea sports, obviously, into desert driving, you name it, it's all available. That's the reason people like me don't want to leave after 25 years. And let me tell you something, if you come to this part of the world, after 5 years, you don't leave. And if you leave, you'll come back. The statistic shows the expats who leave the Gulf after 5 years, they'll come back. 63% of them, they do come back. There's a magnet about this country. I don't know what it is. They brainwash me, of course, on that one. And also, amazingly, it's pro-British. And I think the Brits are well respected and well liked over here, and well trusted as well, which is unlike many other nationalities, which I'm not going to mention. So we have to make sure that we will not disappoint them. One thing I will say is successive governments in the past, they didn't take Qatar, I'm talking about British governments, didn't take Qatar seriously. But I'm really glad in the last few years we have seen an amazing interest in the country, and to the extent that British Embassy in Doha commercial sections, there are about 18 people working in the commercial section. At one time, there was only one person. That just shows the interest of the government into this country. Also, on the other side of the coin, the opportunities available for British companies. That's hence the British government investing in people money in resources. We as a British business group over here, we have over 300 members. We're the single largest expat business group. We've been established since 1992. All the advice we give is free of charge, and we have people, we have lawyers, we have bankers, we have members been with the group for more than 20 years. So there is a wealth of knowledge and wealth of experience among our ranks, which will be all open to whoever wants to come this part of the world, especially, as I said, people from northwest of England. But please don't come and talk about football if you're not Manchester United supporter. That's one thing I will say. But joking aside, as David said earlier on, how to survive living in Qatar, you have to have a sense of humor and huge patience. Patience, patience, patience. That is what it is. Other than that, this will be a wrong country for yourself. On that happy note, I'll say thank you very much. Sorry if I digress a little bit on talking about football, but that is me. It's just in my DNA. I can't help it. Thank you again, and we'll be open to questions. I'm sure people have all my email address and telephone numbers. We went out with the email earlier on. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions should you have one. Thank you again.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Imad. And Imad, remember, we'll be joining our panel of experts right now, in fact, to discuss the opportunities for trade with the Gulf. So alongside Imad, we'll have, of course, Nick Cochran-Diet, who spoke earlier on. And we will also have Sandra Thornber, who is International Trade Advisor at the Department for International Trade. So a reminder again for everyone watching, you will be able to ask questions in a little while. We've already had one coming in. I've got some questions to ask myself, but I'll also drop through questions that we receive from our audience today as we go along. So Sandra, I'll start with you if that's all right, and I'll welcome you to our discussion. With a first question from me, which just follows on from what our guests today have already been saying, which is, what's the first thing that a company should do if it's looking at moving into this part of the world? What would you say is the first thing that they should do? What are the first steps they should take to make sure that they don't, as Nick says, fall at the first hurdle?
Well, I would say contact your local Department for International Trade team. We have quite a large team here in the Northwest, so we can assign an international trade advisor to help you to research the markets. In the Gulf in particular, I think it's more relevant to say, do your research and go prepared. And particularly do your research into the culture. As we've already heard this morning, Emiratis, Qataris are educated in the UK. They come and study here at our universities. So there is a real fantastic relationship there, and they do remember the Brits when they go back home. But we do have different cultures, and as already been said this morning, it's about getting to know your Emirati partner or your Emirati customer, and be prepared to set aside time for that social interaction. You may be sitting and drinking numerous cups of coffee for 2 hours before you even start to talk about business. So factor that time into your day, and don't try and cram too much into your day.
Thank you. The question I was going to ask next, which actually follows on quite nicely for that, is something that Imad talked about, which is how do you choose the right partner? Nick, I wonder if I could return to you on that one. Just some tips for you, for businesses looking to find a partner. What tips would you give them to help find the right people to deal with?
I mean, Imad covered that very nicely, I think, with regards to getting to know them. And yes, some of them are very smart salespeople, and they will promise you, all sorts of wonderful things. and and intent with good intention. Sometimes they lose interest after a while, and that's where I think that having some local knowledge, whether it's people in a business group or who you can trust and ask, well, this person's promising me all of this. And then there are the lawyers who will make sure that, yes, they talk. I mean, one of our former energy ministers used to talk about, that we have a Catholic marriage, and he's a good Muslim gentleman. They understand the concept of, long-term relationships. They like the concept of long-term relationships. But you do need that patience and making sure you get to know your partner, well, he has had the experience. But what I would say now is that the Emiratis, that's what I'm saying, as of yesterday, they're changing the rules here. So you don't need now in some sectors to have a local partner. So you can come here 100%, set up onshore, not a free zone. And that's why it's important, again, to keep up to date with what the rules and regulations are. Now, oil and gas companies cannot set up. So there are restrictions on this new commercial companies law. Again, good reason to talk to DIT, talk to the embassy, talk to BBG members, talk to lawyers, etc., to find out exactly what the latest rules and regulations are. But the Emiratis are trying to encourage people to come here and take away any barriers, such as this issue about picking the right partner, the wrong partner, long-term partner, and all the rest of it. What I would say, though, is that if you do pick a partner and it's the right partner, as Imad rightly said, these relationships go on for years and years. I mean, BP's been here for nearly 90 years, which is most of the company's history. So if you do pick the right partner, and whether it's government or an individual, they do like long-term relationships, and that, helps budgets, make you make plans and things. The other thing I would say is that, picking a partner here and then doing business in the region can also add to complications. So if you can come here now to the UAE without needing a partner and do 100% investment yourself, it is going to make life easier to do business with neighboring GCC countries. So it's a very significant change that they've made to the commercial companies law in the last day or two.
Thanks very much, Nick. Sandra, I was going to turn to you here actually as well and ask if there are any tips that you would give businesses that you work with in terms of finding the right long-term partners to do business with.
Well, yes. I mean, again, that's something that we can help UK companies to research, to identify the right partner. And again, it goes back to what's already been said, really, in terms of doing your research and making sure that that partner is the best fit for you. Because as well as them having the right foster, with having the right connections and being able to open doors for you, you've also got to like that person. You've got to get on with that person. And just make sure that it's the right fit for your business. But working with the British business groups and working with the local chambers of commerce and our teams based throughout the Gulf, we can certainly help you to identify that right person for you and make sure it's the right route to market for you.
Sandra, while I've got you, another question for you, if I may. We talked about oil and gas. I think there is a sort of general perception, perhaps, that's the biggest or even only thing that people can trade with the Gulf countries on. But as we've heard today, there are a lot of other sectors as well, aren't there, that people can and should look at when they're looking at trade with this region and all the opportunities that are there.
Yes, certainly. I mean, even in terms of staying with sort of the energy side of the business, there is huge solar farms in the UAE. There are nuclear power stations in the UAE. It's not just about oil and gas. There's the food and drink sector, there's the healthcare sector, infrastructure. These countries throughout the Gulf are continuing to develop. And because the populations are fairly small compared to, other countries, there's a lot of expertise that needs to be brought in. So there are huge opportunities throughout many sectors.
Just talking about the expertise there, one of the greatest demands is for upgrading and skills upgrading of the local indigenous population. Huge necessity there. As you say, there are very few of them wanting to do really ambitious infrastructure plans. And they know that today they can do these things with fewer people, with robotics and all the rest of it, AI and things. But they do need to continuously upgrade the skills and things. And UK education is highly respected. UK innovation, UK engineering, on all of these sectors, it doesn't matter which one, the retraining, reskilling of the local indigenous population is an area that the UK can really take to its full advantage.
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks, Nick. I'm going to jump in and ask about the current the COVID pandemic and the current situation, because it does tie into what we've been talking about already, which is relationship building. I'll come to you in a moment, Imad. But I was wondering, first of all, I was going to ask you to talk us through how it's affected things, Imad, particularly in Qatar, but also how you think it's affecting the ability of people to form those partnerships and those relationships, given the historic importance of in-person meetings. Imad, would you be able to talk us through that?
Yeah, literally the pandemic had a very mild effect to Qatar, actually, simply because Qatar is a peninsula and the only land border is with Saudi Arabia, and that's been blocked since 3 years now through the blockade. So it was very easy for Qatari authorities to control who's coming to the country. And the health sector in Qatar is very, very progressive and it's very modern. And they have amazing facilities, and this is all government and not just private. So from that point of view, we're having less than 200 cases a day, literally. And I think for the last 2 months now, people who are recovering from the virus are actually more than people being affected. So I think the tide has turned in Qatar. Really, the authorities are winning the battle against the virus. How it's affected the business? Of course, it affected business in terms of, because we did have a lockdown in the country earlier on when everybody stayed home, and that's obviously affected productivity of the factories and construction sector and all that. But the other side of the coin is government actually helped by paying the utilities, by sometimes stopping people paying the interest on their loans and this sort of thing. So say, for example, we at my organization, we are saving almost like a 65 to 70,000 pounds a month on just utilities bill. So that's a big sum of money to save. Of course, with airport and countries being closed, we don't get visitors from overseas. In my organization, we have partnership with 64 international companies. So usually each month, we have about 4, 5, even 10 business visitors visiting us for various companies and products, various projects. All that stuff. But of course, the modern technology with Team and Zoom and Skype and this sort of things did help. But I'm a strong believer. I'm an old-fashioned guy, I come from an old school. I strongly believe in face-to-face meeting and getting to know people and having endless cup of tea and coffee with them and all that. So that is literally came out of the equation now. So we are. So to answer your question, really, we had a minimum effect into our business as a company. The only effect we had is obviously not having visitors, but we overcome that by using modern technologies. So, but we're very optimistic. I think within first quarter next year, we believe everything will back to normal.
Thank you. Nick, I wanted to turn to you on this one as well. How's it affected things on the ground in Abu Dhabi and in the Emirates? And how has it affected people's ability to make these new partnerships? Nick?
Well, it was a double whammy, unfortunately. Obviously the actual COVID itself, but also the fall in oil prices around the world hit the Emirates quite severely. but it's a resilient country. You know, this country's been through far worse, believe it or not, before, you know, the federation and things. I mean, times were pretty tough. People didn't have access to water and electricity. Today, we still have water and electricity flowing quite freely. We've got hospitals and things coping with it in a very sophisticated manner. So, yes, it was certainly impacted. They were on the case very quickly, looking down, you know, quite seriously, you know, in March, and have been keeping their finger on the pulse ever since. And health and safety has been the #1 priority. Dubai's economy obviously got impacted quite seriously. Dubai is jumping back onto its, you know, resilience. I mean, Dubai has seen so many knocks and things over the decades. They fall over, they get pushed over, whatever. They get up, they dust the dust off their dish dash, and they say, okay, that's it, let's start again. And that resilience is showing, you know, as strong as ever right now. The airline industry, obviously, Emirates and Etihad both got impacted severely. It'll come back. It'll take time. They're doing it properly. They want to build back better, which is why they're changing the rules and regulations, as I say, both commercially and socially, so that when we come out of this, we'll come out stronger. And that lessons have been learned. It won't have been, you know, wasted time and everybody went home. Meetings are still happening, but they're happening virtually. UK government, UAE government, I mean, they talk regularly. It's just through webcams. But it hasn't stopped any of that. It hasn't. In fact, I would say that the relationship between the two countries has grown stronger as a result. And people are working together, whether it was, oh, we haven't got this, you know, chemical for this PPE. Oh, we need a Nightingale hospital. You know, I mean, the Emiratis came to UK's rescue and vice versa. I mean, it was very mutual. Let's work on this together. We're in this together. Let's help each other. And I would say that the strength of the relationship between the two countries is stronger now than it's been for a long, long time. And not by accident, by people doing a lot of hard work from both sides and at all levels. You know, companies trying to make sure that companies carry on doing their work together, whether it's the National Oil Company and BP, you know, helping each other out, or whether it's, you know, pharmaceutical companies, UK, Emiratis providing each other with equipment or know-how. You know, one of the BBG members in Abu Dhabi, Mediclinic, I mean, they're one of the largest private healthcare. I mean, they were looking after tens of thousands of people, you know, doing the testing and everything. The country really took it so seriously and had one of the highest testing per capita in the world, you know, right from the beginning. Didn't sort of hesitate or wait. They said, let's get on and crack this. And the benefits of all of this will show not next week, but, you know, next year and the following years. We've got Expo 2020. They're still calling it Expo 2020, October 21. We've got the UAE's 50th anniversary next year. They're working on the 2071 plan now for the next 50 years. So this is a very forward-thinking country. And they've got a 2050 energy plan. UK's got COP26 coming. They're working all these things together. They realize that, you know, working together makes people a lot stronger together.
Thank you very much, Nick. Sandra, I wanted to turn to you here as well. I'm trying to look forward a little bit. Obviously, pandemic has led to a sort of turbulent time worldwide, and of course it will have posed challenges in the Gulf. I wondered if you could talk me through what effect it has had on you and the businesses you've worked with, but also maybe we could look ahead and think how are businesses adapting to get through this and continue trading?
Just firstly, just say I'm going to turn my camera off because my broadband connection is a bit unstable at the moment. But I do have a colleague on standby, ready to jump in if I lose you. Yes, the businesses in the UK have been affected differently according to what sector you're in, really. I mean, with some of our food and drink companies that supply to retail, their sales have gone through the roof. Whereas if they're supplying to the service industry, then obviously those sales have plummeted. And yes, a lot of the exports sales have dropped off, but we're beginning to see some recovery there now. In terms of the future, I'm going to talk about some of our services a little bit later on. We don't know if the businesses are going to work differently in the future, whether they will travel overseas less than they did because they found solutions for doing that without getting on a plane. So we've already talked about Skype and Zoom and Teams and all of the different platforms. But, you know, at the same time, it is very much about relationship building in the Gulf. So we would hope that they will travel to see their Arab partners throughout the Gulf region, and continue to attend exhibitions and continue to join trade missions, because it is very important to have those face-to-face relationships.
Thanks. Another quick question from me. I'll perhaps start with Imad here. In terms of language, is it important that people exporting from the UK do learn Arabic, or is that something that can be got round? I'll ask everyone this, but Imad, I'll start with you.
Yeah, very much English is widely spoken. To be honest, there is absolutely no need for Arabic language at all. Even if you're an Arabic speaker, you speak to Qatari in Arabic, he will answer you in English because he wants to practice his English. All the tenders and documents and specification all are in English. Admittingly, there is a bit of a try by the government to issue everything from the government in Arabic language, but there are competent translators available in the country, and usually each company have their own translator, like we have in our group, our own translator. But to answer your question, yes, the huge advantage of speaking Arabic, but not essential at all. You could get around, but not knowing Arabic at all.
And Nick, is that your experience as well with all the time you spent in the Gulf?
My English is getting better. My Emirati friends are teaching me. I mean, their English is immaculate. You know, having grown up here, when everybody spoke, everything was done in Arabic or a little bit of, you know, other local languages. Today, it's English, and the young Shabab, the young Emiratis, all speak, you know, better English than I do. What I would say, though, is that culturally, you know, it's nice to be able to say Assalamu alaikum and, you know, Ahlan wa sahlan. So I wouldn't discourage it. I would encourage, you know, a little bit of you know, time spent in being culturally sensitive and learning a language as being culturally sensitive to me. But you won't need it for your work, but you'll need it for the relationship building, and you won't need to be a interpreter level just to be able to say a few niceties. It's respectful, I think.
Can I just mention something there, please? I'll strongly advise newcomers, not just the language really, just to study the history of the country. This country, although it is young, it's got a fascinating history really, and it's still a very tribal country. And there are many books written about each of the GCC countries, which tells you about the history of each tribe and influential tribes, and who's good and who's literally originally from Qatar and will not move from other countries. So having that local knowledge, having that little history of the country, amazingly open a lot of doors when you go to talk to some senior Qataris, because they love to talk about their country. They think of all of us coming from the West, we're a little bit ignorant about what's happening in this country and all, which there are people who are not interested in this part, but I really feel if you are serious about doing business in this country, pick up a book and get yourself familiar about the history, about the country, and that even will help you if choosing the right partner, because you will know which family name is important than the other family name, and which tribe is more influential than the other tribe. So this sort of, although this very trivial things, but believe me, it's very important. I definitely recommend that.
Thanks, and that leads me nicely actually into the question I was going to ask Sandra, which is, and it's a subject that has been covered by our other speakers in part this morning, but which is, are there any sort of specific cultural things that you...
I think we've already touched on quite a lot of it. I think one of the biggest criticisms that I think that the British get is that we're always in a hurry, and we're very time driven. So, you know, in the UK, we expect a meeting to start at a certain time and to end at a certain time. And very little time is spent on just chit chat, basically. So we're very much, we're in a hurry to do everything. And I think that it just doesn't work in Gulf markets. It's just a completely different cultural attitude. I think people want to get to know you as a person. They want to know about your family. They want to know about your interests, your hobbies. They do want to talk football. And surprisingly, at the beginning of this, just before we went live, we were all talking about football because we all support different Northwest teams. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing that you should expect. People throughout the Gulf, as I said earlier, have been educated on the most part, either in the UK or the US, and their English is impeccable. And you can always tell where they've been educated because they'll either speak English with a few plums in the mouth, or they'll have an American twang. So yeah, you certainly don't need to worry about the language at all. It is the business language is English. But yes, absolutely, read the books. Don't They Know It's Friday is a fantastic book, which was written a long time ago, but a lot of it is still relevant. I mean, things have moved on, but in terms of giving you that basic grounding, Ahmed is absolutely important and hugely influential. So you need to know the names of those families.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, we've had a couple of questions come in from the people watching today, so I'll run through a couple of them if I may. I'll start off, I think there's something that Nick was talking about the change in the rules and regulations regarding onshore companies in the UAE. This might be one for you, Sandra, actually, as well as Nick. Is there anywhere that people can get a sort of more detailed information on that, and will they still need local sales agents? Sandra, can you start us off there?
Yeah, in terms of the free zones, they've been established certainly in the UAE for decades, and there are advantages and disadvantages within the free zones. So you can import and re-export without duties. They are basically tax-free zones, but then they are, and Nick, if I don't know if this has changed, but they are treated as offshore areas. So if you then sell into, say, for example, Dubai proper, then there are import duties of, I think it was about 5% that are imposed on those goods. But the free zones do allow you to be 100% foreign owned. Which up until recently, it was really the only way that you could do that without an Emirati partnership. But yes, I mean, Nick, if you want to carry on from that, but yeah, the information is available from our teams in the UAE as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is new news. I mean, so I'm just reading here from the National. The president issued a wide-ranging, significant changes to the 2015 Commercial Companies Law amending 51 articles. I do not have the 51 articles. Introducing 3 new ones. Among the amendments is the abolition of a requirement for onshore companies to have a major UAE shareholder, a measure that reduces overhead costs, facilitates the ease of doing business for foreign investors, and provides flexibility of operations for any business wishing to operate anywhere in the country. I won't go through it all, but and this is the importance of being in touch with people on the ground, wherever it is you need. All these companies like Gateway who give advice. The chairman of the BBG in Dubai has got a company. You know, they give advice on these things. They know because they're in touch on a daily basis when these things change. They know what was going on before. You know, it affects the Foreign Direct Investment Law number 19 of 2018. That's been scrapped. So what you knew in 2018, that's gone. Now we're into 2020. This is the Emiratis, you know. They're forever changing because they want to be, you know, one of the top sort of 5 governments and all the rest of it in the world. And so you've got to keep moving. You've got to keep changing. This is, you know, this is, as I mentioned, Dubai, they're forever changing. UAE, Abu Dhabi, ADGM, they're just looking at new ways. And if you've got new ideas, as I say, new innovation, they want to hear about it because they think and they believe, and I think they're absolutely spot on, that you need to constantly change. And this COVID is the opportunity to build back better. There will be a new normal. You know, yes, we'll be using telepresence and Zoom and all the rest of it, but we'll still be going face-to-face meetings. So it's, you know, all of this stuff amalgamated, which is why, as I mentioned, they also changed some of the societal laws. So I don't have specific details. I'm not a lawyer. I don't think anybody's really got to grips with the changes that were made yesterday. But as my gut instinct tells me this is going to help, and I think others believe exactly the same, FDI, and encourage people not just to come into free zones, but to come into the UAE 100% onshore and to feel relaxed about putting part of the societal changes are giving people the opportunity to stay here for longer. Because why would you invest in a country if you felt, well, I'm going to leave in 3 years' time? I mean, Imad's been there, whatever, 25 years. I've been here 50 plus years. You know, the people are staying for longer, and they're helping to make it easier to stay for longer, encouraging people to invest for longer.
Thank you, Nick. A quick question, I think this is probably one for Sandra. Is there an equivalent British business group in Oman? One of our audience asks.
Yes, I think there are. I think there are throughout the Gulf, and we have worked previously with the British Business Group in Qatar, which were hugely helpful in supporting a trade mission that we took out a number of years ago. There is also a British Business Group in Dubai as well, isn't there, Nick?
Yeah.
And I think that was voted one of the best in the world for a number of years running. Sorry, Ahmad. But there are other partner organisations as well. I mean, the Chambers of Commerce are hugely important in a number of the Gulf markets. It used to be that I think when businesses set up in the UAE, they had to register with the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know if that's still the case, Nick.
Yes.
But there are other support organisations like the British Centres for Business, for example, that can also help you to invest in the UAE, for example. And obviously, we work with the governments of all of the Gulf markets as well in terms of inward investment into these markets. You need your legal advice. Some of these markets offer British businesses incubator services so that you can dip your toe in the water for 12 months before you decide which particular business entity is suitable for you, and they can help with visas and staffing as well. So there's a huge amount of support out there.
And do visit the UAE embassy in London. I mean, they've got a team, economics team there, commercial team there, who are all for trying to encourage two-way trade between UK and UAE. There's a new young ambassador there who's got a lot of zest and a great team behind him who are all for building the relationship between the two countries. And of course, you know, one of the best ways of building relationships is through bilateral trade. I didn't mention the statistics earlier, but in the early 20s, we were given a target of £12 billion by 2015, bilateral trade, UK, UAE. We got there in 2014, and then in 2015, they set us another target, which was 25 billion bilateral trade between the UK and UAE. COVID, of course, has slowed that down a little bit, but we're still at 18.4 billion UK, UAE. This ranks, you know, number 4 in the world, and number 4 behind USA, Europe, and China. So, I mean, we are right up there when it comes to both countries wanting to do business. And the proof of the pudding is in the numbers. We are doing business, and the desire is to continue to grow that business.
Thanks.
Just to answer the earlier question, yes, there is a business group in Oman, in Muscat. I have their details. If anybody wants access to that, I'll be more than happy to provide that.
Thanks, Imad. Appreciate that, and we'll be able to get that shared, I'm sure. Thank you very much. We talked about the need for patience and persistence to achieve business success, and the next question I think is one to which the answer will be patience and persistence. The question is, and I might start with you, Imad, on this one. And it says, as a first point of call, who would the panel recommend that someone spoke to regarding potential sovereign fund investment in a world-first innovation? In this case, I think in the energy from waste space, but the principle applies all round, doesn't it? Because there's a lot of talk, isn't there, about the sovereign funds they've got. How would one make a start on that? Imad, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, the sovereign fund in Qatar is controlled by Qatar Investment Authority, and they have their offices in the West Bay of Doha, and the Qatar Investment Authority reports directly to Emir of Qatar. So they're not actually part of any ministry or they're independent authority, but a very important authority. So they have their own website, their own people. We're closely connected to them. Actually, my company, we're doing the interior fit out for them at the moment, and we have big contacts there. So again, should anybody wants to have access to Sovereign Fund, Qatar Investment Authority, I'll be more than happy to help and provide contact names and details.
Thanks very much indeed. And Nick, again, a sort of similar question for you. Again, the sovereign funds get talked about a lot in the UAE context. How would people make a start?
So we've got several sovereign. Abu Dhabi Investment Authority is probably the older one people have heard about. But the one that I mentioned earlier, although I didn't refer to as a sovereign fund, this Hub 71 belongs to Mubadala, which is another. The Emiratis are very inventive when it comes to doing business. So, you know, Mubadala is everything. It can be a think tank, it can be a sovereign welfare fund. It's very innovative in their approach to doing business. But they do have this thing called Hub 71. So if people Google Hub 71, have a look there, see if that's the sort of where Mubadala will help people, you know, set up and invest in the country and, you know, help them, give them floor space and all the rest of it. I've been in there. It's very impressive. A lot of, you know, smart people with innovative ideas. Again, if you're in the UK and it's kind of easier, the UAE embassy in London, you know, approach them. Again, I can give you contact details for the commercial attaché there, put you in touch there. But they're very helpful. Masdar, if it's an energy-related and a sort of renewables energy-related question, Masdar have an office, and there's a very bright young person running that office very successfully. Masdar, you know, doing huge investments into the UK with the what you call offshore wind and things, and they're always looking for new ideas. So whether you come into Abu Dhabi through Mubadala Sovereign Welfare Fund, or whether you want to go through the UAE Embassy in London or through Mazda, UK-based entity, or Mazda here, or BIA. I mean, there are a whole host of opportunities, and we'd be happy to try and send you in the right direction to get you started there.
Thanks very much indeed. A question that came in earlier from Syed. Actually, it's for Nick again, but I'm going to ask a very similar question to Imad as well. Nick, you mentioned that businesses from Manchester would get a warm welcome in the UAE. This is, of course, the football connection again. Are there any particular sectors, Syed asks, that you think would get the warmest welcome in the UAE as a result of that connection?
I don't think there's any discrimination. What I think would be warmest welcome would be the innovation. How new is your idea? How will it help a country with a small population that has got huge aspirations? So I think that, okay, they've invested in Manchester City Football Club, and it's wonderful. I've been to the Etihad Stadium, beautiful. Been in that whole area. But, they weren't thinking about just investing in a football stadium. They were thinking about investing in Manchester, period. So it wasn't just football. Anything, that's innovative, it's future thinking, it's progressive, it's going to help a country with a small population with big aspirations, please.
Thanks. And Imad, a similar question to you. We talked and we've joked a little about the football connection, but of course it is important to help build that human connection. Do you think there's any particular way that companies working in Qatar can build on that?
Well, the buzzword in Qatar is World Cup 2022. So although the World Cup revolves around football, but actually it has enormous opportunities for construction companies, for fit-out companies, for security companies, for crowd control, for security companies, IT companies, you name it. Anything to do with World Cup is required. Also, the hospitality sector is gearing up for the World Cup. As I mentioned earlier on, about 1.5 million people expected to come into Qatar. Those people are going to need places to stay. They need to eat somewhere. They need to sleep somewhere. So all that literally is like a Pandora's box in a way. Is once you open it, there's no limit. So anybody who wants to come into Qatar, there are many, many opportunities. And literally, even with pandemic, even with prices of oil down, the target is there. The World Cup is going to happen. It's 2022 in November 2022. So the whole country is gearing up for that, which opening a lot of opportunities, a lot of doors will be open for that. Admittingly, some of the projects are being awarded a long time ago, but there are still opportunities if people want to come.
Absolutely, thank you. We're going to be hearing an awful lot more from and about Qatar, of course, in the future. That's all from our panel discussion today. So thanks to our panellists. But before we go, we're going to hear more from Sandra Thornber from the Department for International Trade, and she's going to tell us more about how the DIT can help businesses with their...
For international trade, we are a government department, and we help UK businesses to export and grow into global markets. We also help overseas companies to locate in the UK through our inward investment teams. So we've approximately 2,500 staff throughout the world, so quite a sizable organisation. The majority of our staff are located in the British embassies and consulates in over 100 markets throughout the world, along with a wide network of overseas partner organisations, some of which we've already mentioned this morning. The international trade advisors, like myself, we are based in regional teams throughout the UK, and we all have extensive knowledge of exporting procedures, along with a wide range of sector and market specialisms. So it's very much a worldwide joined up circle of support to UK businesses. In terms of export strategy and planning, so we can work with you to conduct research and identify suitable markets for your products and services. This can be looking at business demand, ease of doing business in certain markets, levels of competition, culture, which we've mentioned is very important in this particular area of the world, as well as others, and trade barriers. So from there, we can work with you to devise and implement an export strategy for developing business from those markets. And once we've identified a suitable market or region to target, we can then start to build market knowledge and identify potential business partners. We can work with our overseas teams along with our overseas business networks to conduct more targeted bespoke research for you, including suitable routes to market and identifying those potential representations, which we've said are so important. So this could be agents, distributors, business partners, or customers. In terms of trade missions and overseas trade shows, so in normal circumstances, we organised numerous overseas trade missions throughout the year, all over the world. At the moment, we're running some of these virtually where we can. So we also provide funding to UK exhibitors throughout the Trade Show Access Programme to exhibit at what we feel are key platforms throughout the years in various sectors. And again, we're trying to deliver some of these virtually at the moment to give you the opportunity to promote your goods and services and to make introductions to overseas buyers. In terms of language and culture, yes, we have said quite a lot about this already. But again, it is something that our overseas teams can advise on. But many of our international trade advisors are multilingual and can advise on cultural aspects of doing business in international markets through their own experiences of living and working overseas. And for example, I mean, I've been an international trade advisor for nearly 20 years, and most of my focus has been on the markets in the Gulf. And quite some time ago, I was called in to advise a business who had made a huge mistake in Abu Dhabi and wanted help on how he could unravel himself from this mistake. And I thought to myself, well, what, instead of being brought in to troubleshoot after these mistakes have been made, why not stop them happening in the first place? So I wrote a cultural brief to help UK businesses to succeed in those markets, or rather to not make those mistakes. So there is very much a wide range of expertise within the regional teams that you should absolutely tap into. In terms of product and service development, so we have a vast array of market and sector expertise within the wider DIT network, but we can also introduce you to external suppliers, for example, the Intellectual Property Office, trade associations, export documentations within the chambers, and freight and logistics suppliers. Finance and getting paid. So your international trade advisor can provide advice on international payments and contractual payment agency. So they can help UK businesses to win export contracts by providing attractive financing terms to overseas buyers. They can help to fulfill orders by supporting working capital loans, and to get paid by insuring against potential buyer default. So there's a wide range of support and expertise available to you. That's just a tiny brief snapshot of what the whole DIT network, both in the UK and overseas, and just spend some time exploring the site and seeing what other services we offer. And certainly sign up to receive export opportunities that are suitable for your business.
Thank you very much indeed, Sandra. And that's all from us for today. So thank you all very much indeed for joining us from wherever you are. Thanks to all our panellists and speakers, to Sandra, to Nick and to Imad. Thanks to MSP Global for hosting us today, and thanks also to Katie from Reach Events for organising. And thanks, of course, to the Department for International Trade for all your help with these events. Now remember, we have one more event coming up. That is called Doing Business in the USA, and it is happening on the afternoon of December the 3rd. The links to that event will be shared after this one. But that's all for today. Once again, thank you very much indeed for joining us.